Buonasera a tutti, good evening and welcome to the Italian Radio Hour. Io sono Viviana and I would like to welcome back our regular listeners, so also welcome any new listeners. Also be sure to like us on Instagram and Facebook at the Italian Radio Hour and subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch up on any past video interviews. Vorrei dare il benvenuto ai nostri ascoltatori da tutto il mondo, grazie per essere con noi anche oggi mentre continuiamo il nostro viaggio per l'Italia e la cultura italiana. So what does Walt Disney, the Golden Gate Bridge and the Marshall Plan have in common? Well, all of them were touched by one of the most important Italian immigrants in American history, Amadeo Peter, aka AP Giannini, who came to San Francisco and founded the iconic Bank of America, a revolutionary financier who believed in social mobility and the birth of Hollywood before anyone else. So join me in this conversation today. I will have directors Valentina Signorelli and Cecilia Zoppelletto, but stay tuned. Prima, pubblicità. Parli italiano? Do you want to learn, improve, or master your Italian? L'Istituto Mondo Italiano can help. Located in the heart of Regent Square, Mondo Italiano offers small group classes and one-on-one private tutoring to help you learn Italian in no time. Visit us online at www.istitutomondoitaliano.org. Well, welcome to the program. Benvenute Valentina e Cecilia. It's great to have you at the Italian Radio Hour.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Well, you have both returned from the US tour where you premiered your latest project, AP Giannini, A Bank to the Future. And I caught the first announcement of the first screening at the New York Cultural Institute for Italian Heritage Month. And the more I dug both into the documentary and also your backgrounds, I was very, very fascinated. But I think I'm going to let you introduce yourself for our audience. So Valentina, would you like to start to sharing something about yourself and where you joining us from today?
Yes, so my name is Valentina Signorelli. I'm Italian. I was born and raised in Italy, and now I'm in London because I moved to London 10 years ago to complete a PhD in film, where I had the chance to meet Cecilia at the University of Westminster. In 2016, I opened my production studio Daytona with my two business partners, Lorenzo Giovenga and Lorenzo Lazzarini. And in 2021, we launched our advertising division, Dogodot. I'm also an academic, currently on kind of a sabbatical. And I will start again in January as associate professor in film and TV at the University of Greenwich here in London.
Congratulations. Cecilia, tell us something about yourself and where are you connecting from today?
Right, so I'm a former Londoner where, as Valentina mentioned, we met, but I now live in Kinshasa, the DRC. Kinshasa, a magical place where in 74, I think people will probably remember the Rumble in the Jungle. So former is Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of Congo. So I am a filmmaker as well, writer, filmmaker, and an academic. I had my PhD in film studies from the University of Westminster, and I now teach at the Académie des Beaux-Arts in Kinshasa, the first university film program in the country. So it's great.
That's
We've had the first graduating class this year, so it's very exciting.
Well, there are a couple of exciting things. Obviously, the graduation of your class. You mentioned before there are upcoming elections in Congo in December.
Yes, and, absolutely.
That is going to be, an historical election as well to be able to witness there.
Well, yes, no, it's going to be a really interesting election. We have the current president has been in charge 4 years, so it's time for the re-election, and it's exciting for me because I've only moved here 3 years ago during the pandemic, so it is the first time that I live an election in the country. It's I'm very curious. I'm looking forward to it. I have a lot of enthusiasm. Usually as an immigrants get really, really excited about stuff, that they haven't, that makes them belong to the country, so exactly. That's how I experience it.
Well, I'm sure you will be documenting a lot of that excitement and reactions, and maybe something else that you will be sharing with the public will definitely come out of it.
Indeed.
So New York, Washington, D.C., Nile, San Francisco, Berkeley, where haven't you been in the last couple of weeks?
Yes.
So was
It's
this your
been
first
a big tour? Sorry.
It's big, and you were even when we met in DC, you had just arrived in the morning, ready to go the following day to California. So it's really been non-stop. Was this your first experience in the US, or have you had you been here before?
Personally, I had been to the US a few times, but as a producer, it was my first US promotional tour. Me and Cecilia filmed AP Giannini Back to the Future in California last year. So we were very happy to be back to promote the film.
Yes. So before, it was my first time in California last year. For somebody who has been studying film, has been studying a lot and teaches a lot of Hollywood history, it was extremely, I don't know, daunting in a way, because we went to film also at the Margaret Herrick Library at the Academy, to film also the archives of the Academy linked to AP Giannini's story and financing Hollywood. So for me, it was a huge deal to be not only in California, but to be in a place which is so pivotal for cinema history. But yes, I've had a film screening in New York. I've had 2 film screenings at the Lincoln Center, one a few years ago, my first feature documentary, and this year also had a short animation film, which made it into the New York African Film Festival. So
wonderful. So before diving into more of the making of this documentary, I would like to show the trailer. So if you can just join me in enjoying a minute.
Who's your hero? My hero's a banker. You know, when you hear a name, you want to know what it's about.
E lui cercò di realizzare il suo sogno e il sogno di tutti.
He provided work to all kinds of people.
You know, for those days, very modern.
You might be an immigrant and have nothing, and they go from that to Bank of America.
So when the 3 of us met in Washington, D.C., that was the projection during the NIAF or NIAF Gala. And I found the documentary so interesting and so educative, and the way that it was, just the story has so many dimensions. I mean, Giannini was like a magic cube, you know, every combination spun and brought to some other initiatives that really touched the community more than what people might be aware of. So let's backtrack. How did this story land, so to speak, on I don't want to say land on your plate, but how did you get interested? And maybe both of you can share your own personal opinion. So Valentina, AP Giannini.
Yes, basically. So as I mentioned, me and Cecilia, we've known each other for a long time because we both did our PhD at the University of Westminster. And the story of AP Giannini Bank to the Future for us as a project dates back to March 2020. So unfortunately, during the first wave of COVID, I was during the first lockdown, I was in London, and I couldn't, like all the other people around the world, I couldn't fly back to my hometown, which is Bergamo. So back then it was the most affected area in Europe. And so, Cecilia, I do remember you were still in London before moving to Kinshasa, maybe for a short time.
I was, yes.
And Cecilia, she texted me one day saying that she had found an interesting video online that was about somebody talking about AP Giannini. So I thought it was an interesting starting point. So we both started researching about the historical figure of A.P. Giannini because we had no idea about who he was. And so we approached the existing biographies and books that exist about him. And so we thought, okay, why don't we develop a project, an actual documentary, a feature-length documentary about that? I know may sound a bit of a crazy thing to do in March 2020, but we both had to, close our offices, our production offices. My office is in Rome, and we turned everything online. And so we thought, okay, maybe we could start, studying and researching. Then we applied for a film development grant from the Italian Ministry of Culture, and we got it. It was the first bit of money that we got for the project. And then step by step, we made sure to find a number of suitable partners, and we also developed some ideas of who to interview, when to interview them, the cities that we wanted to film in. But then it took us a bit of time to make sure that we could actually fly to the US from the DRC in the case of Cecilia, from London in my case, and from Rome in case of our crew, because of course we couldn't just fly to the US without having to quarantine for a long time. So we thought, okay, as soon as we have, the right moment where we can all fly to the US and not having to quarantine, that's the moment we're going to, to actually start filming the project in the US. And so we did last year, May 2022, and then that was followed by another week in Liguria, where the Giannini family is from, and also Rome, where we filmed the narrator, which is played by actor Giorgio Cantarini. So I don't know, Cecilia, if you'd like to add anything else.
So it looked like if I remember correctly, at the screening in Washington, D.C., one of the family members was in attendance. Am I correct, from Liguria? And Cecilia, you might be on mute.
Sorry, I didn't realize. Yeah, no, absolutely. So that was I can just say it in this way, crazy surprise. Nobody had warned us, and it was just a gift, really, to meet somebody from the Scatena family, which is the family that A.P. Giannini's mother married into after his father had passed away. She had been a widow for a few years, and she had married into the Scatena family, and a descendant was there, and he came to say hello at the beginning, just before we went. We started screening. It became, I don't know, I was very, it was very emotional in a way, because we started this research. We met so many people. We met some descendants. We met descendants who, from the Italian community, who had received loans from Mr. Giannini, and the surprises keep on coming. And then we had this gentleman who did this reveal just before, and we thought, I don't know, can you elaborate? Because I'm still under shock when I think about it,
Yes, Valentina.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree with Cecilia. It was a crazy surprise because, on the one hand, I think the part that I like the most about this project is the ability to connect with the Italian American community and see that, the Giannini's work and vision still has implications today, practical implications in the ability of many Italian American descendants to run a business or to start a business. And but then there's also the relatives that of the Giannini family, that this is a story in the past somehow, but there's also relatives that approach us. That's really nice to see that it's not a story of the past. It's actually, this is a story of the present, and hopefully also about the future.
The future, absolutely. So let's dive in a little bit without, it's again, it's a story that unfolds in so many different directions. And let's talk about what type of man was Giannini, because this is what you have been able, both of you, to capture with this documentary. Really, his vision, his values. When Cecilia talked about loans, anyone could lend money, but to other people. But here, it was not just a regular loan. and they were not necessarily long contracts. I think it was still his belief that a handshake was as binding as someone's signature if they could repay. Okay, if they couldn't, also Giannini had some sort of forgiveness on those loans. So if you can kind of elaborate on probably the many dimensions of why Giannini was different than just a financier, just a banker.
If I can start something that came to my mind when we were looking through the material, talking to the people. It was mainly what is interesting about Giannini is that he really believed in people. He didn't, he believed in their dreams. He believed that they could make it. He believed in these poor people who didn't seem to have much, but he actually believed in their potential. And that is amazing because, how many people can just bet on you, and not to make money out of you. Of course, as we always say, the Bank of Italy, which then became Bank of America, was not a charity organization. So obviously there was a financial aim towards it, but he didn't become like the greedy banker that we all believe that all bankers are. He really put forward the fact that if you believe in people, you can only achieve something great for the greater community, and everybody will be happy, which is the kind of message that it takes somebody who has a lot of courage, and that's what I get from the Giannini story, somebody who has courage and somebody who has a great sense of potential in other people. Like, I don't think he gave money to everybody just because. I think he gave money to the community and to a great many people who didn't have access, but of course he had an understanding of good ideas, honest people, and immigrants with a dream.
Mm-hmm.
If I can add one aspect, so I remember when I first moved to London, and of course the UK was still in the EU, so it was quite easy to move from another EU country to another EU country. The first thing you have to do when you move to another country is to open a bank account, because without a bank account you cannot do anything. You cannot,
yes.
you need it to have a debit card or a credit card, but also to be able to work, because that's the first thing that a potential employer asks you is what's your bank details, and also to pay tax and or start a business, whatever. So it's still hard today, even when you are a regular immigrant, let's say, and it's hard because not all the banks will treat you equally, and there is always that word of mouth in the community what bank is the best at the beginning when you move to another country. But we don't need to forget that in the past, and especially at the beginning of the 20th century when Bank of Italy was founded, because it was founded in 1904, most immigrants in the US it wasn't easy for them to have a bank account, and for women it was impossible, literally. So the idea of starting a bank, and specifically a depository bank, where each person could go and deposit a bit of money and build up from the little savings that they were putting aside, was kind of revolutionary, not just in terms of the practical implications that meant, because the moment you have a bank account and you have a bit of savings, you can ask for a loan or you can attract investors. But it made a big difference psychologically also, as Cecilia mentioned. So because if you have a dream, it's just a dream in your mind. But the moment you have a bank account and you have a payment plan or a loan or a list of potential investments you can get, that really makes your project and your dream concrete and come true day by day. So I think that's one of the main differences between Giannini and other banking models back then, because and that's also reflected into the handshake, and we touch upon that in the documentary, and it's quite well known, especially in San Francisco, because Mr. Giannini used to give a loan on a handshake, and the word of a person, the word of honor, would count as much as somehow having a degree. So right now, the more you have a degree, the higher your education level, the more secure you look in front of a bank, in the eyes of a banker, because of course it kind of guarantee that you would be able to create a project, a structured project. But back then, people were illiterate, they couldn't speak English, they didn't have much money, and so their word of honor was actually the only thing that mattered, and their handshake used to be their signature, to quote a person from our documentary that says, the handshake used to be your signature. You don't do it anymore.
Now, let me see if I remember correctly. I'm very bad with dates, but in the beginning of the 1900s, maybe 1906, there was also an earthquake in San Francisco that kind of crumbled the city, and there was something interesting that happened in the documentary. So, can we reveal a little bit of it, because I think that's still to add to the character and probably the quick thinking personality of A.P. Giannini.
So in a moment of confusion, 1906, there was a great earthquake in San Francisco, and it did destroy most of the city. All the archive footage, all the archive images that we have, photographs, testify that the city was literally taken down to the ground. And at that moment, when everybody didn't know what to do, and the state of panic is not only about today, who's still surviving, what do we have, where are we going to sleep tonight, because there were no more homes. Giannini had the cold, logical, intelligent thing to do, and leadership, definitely leadership, to understand that this was the moment not to back down, to be able to be there for everybody, and save the savings of all the community that had put money into the bank, into Bank of Italy. So he was able very early in the morning to take the deposits, hide them in a cart covered with vegetables and fruits, to get them out, basically in somewhere safe, and then go back to the people of San Francisco and say, I'm here for you, and we're loaning money like before, more than before. So that was, and I'm glad that you're putting up some images, because it is, when we look at this, we understand his act was unprecedented.
And the idea of the fruit cart that was calling up a friend or something that to transport to all these. Now, talking about, kind of jump a little bit forward, when we look at the film industry, he also had a great vision regarding that. Valentina, would you like to talk a little bit about his contribution to some of Hollywood's masterpieces that kind of have Giannini's name behind?
Yes, so basically Giannini was, and Bank of Italy was the first to invest in the film industry a few years before other banks, and particularly the film industry of California and Hollywood. So we're at the beginning of the 20th century, and so the filmmaking was something, kind of a pioneering thing, kind of very independent, kind of a guerrilla art somehow, because there was no industry prior to that. So like any innovation, anytime someone comes up with an idea of not just producing film, but also buying seats for Nickelodeon back then, and then for theater, was something that people weren't used to asking money for and receiving money for. And Bank of Italy, to quote Mr. Warren Shirk from the Academy, that's the person that we had the chance to interview, Bank of Italy contributed to creating a sustainable financing model for the industry. believing some of the young filmmakers back then that then became basically part of cinema history, like, Cecil B. DeMille, Frank Capra, Max Sennett, Walt Disney. This year, for example, 2023 marks the 100th anniversary of the birth of the Disney Studios, and the Disney Studios were actually founded and they were born thanks to an investment from Bank of Italy. United Artists also, that was 4 filmmakers banded together, again, to quote the film, to produce and distribute films, also owes everything to Bank of Italy. Charlie Chaplin, that I forgot to mention, he was already, a young actor and filmmaker. We have a beautiful sequence shot in Niles that was one of the early hubs of the filmmaking industry in California, and then Chaplin moved to Los Angeles to film The Kid. The money to produce The Kid, that's one of his most famous film, came from the Bank of Italy. And still the birth of the stardom, so the idea that in order to attract investments and then to sell movies, the audience, and particularly the American audience, needs to see, they go to the cinema because they want to see that actor or that actress in that new film. And so that model that kind of guaranteed the success of the film was an idea of Giannini and Bank of Italy, and then also that continued into Bank of America. I don't know, Cecilia, if you want to mention or expand on Disney, maybe, because that's an interesting aspect of, also the consolidation of and the birth of animation film as an industry in California is, thanks to Giannini.
Yes, no, it's okay. Go ahead.
So, go ahead, Valentina.
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
So before we start to talk about a couple of people that we see in the documentary, there is another huge achievement that you have to associate with Giannini, Golden Gate Bridge. So we talk about, banking, we talk about the movie industry. Now we're talking about the Golden Gate Bridge. That was a massive undertaking. A couple of words, maybe, Cecilia, on this project that we can still see Giannini's signature with.
Yes, absolutely. So that's that's one of the most famous civil engineering projects in the world to date. It's still hailed as not only postcard perfect and picture perfect for those who know San Francisco, but it was a great venture on the part of finance, because Strauss, like all the other immigrants, had a dream, designed this very new, experimental in a way, very new way of building a bridge, and couldn't find the funding for many reasons, one of them being that it was just too expensive. At that time, Bank of America was doing well, but not only had at the head of the bank somebody who could understand a vision, and that's what I was saying before, could believe in somebody's dream and back it. So he was able to back the fantastic dream that we're still appreciating today. It was one of the first things that we wanted to do when we got to San Francisco, after all the research that we had done on Giannini, was let's go to the Golden Gate Bridge, which was great. And then I have to say, it kind of sums up why we're so interested in the figure of Giannini, because as you launched it at the beginning, what do all these things have in common? So we've seen a man who was able to be very versatile with banking financing. He didn't look at it in a way that was stuck. And, it was very modern, even for that time. And it's still modern now. One man was interested, first, the trigger was the social mobility of all these immigrants. And then, launched it in commercial, agriculture, the film industry, civil engineering, development funds for nations, because we must not forget that he was part of that key that got the Marshall Plan happening for Italy. So, 360 vision of what financing could do. unparalleled, really.
It is indeed. It is of a proportion that, again, it goes beyond understanding that it's one person behind all these major enterprises. So now, during the documentary, the documentary is narrated by Giorgio Cantarini. And tell us a little bit about your collaboration with Giorgio.
Yes, so Giorgio Cantarini is an Italian actor, and he's famous he started out as a child actor, really, because he starred in 2 Oscars-winning movies at the same time in the same year, which are Life is Beautiful. He was playing the young kid, Roberto Benigni's son, but also in The Gladiator, he was playing Russell Crowe's son in the film. And Giorgio since then has been working on very different projects. And during COVID, he was in New York, then he had to go back to Italy, and then he was about to move to New York again last year in 2022. And in fact, he is in New York right now. So when we came back from our filming experience in California, we realized that we ended up having far more interviews that we had originally planned, because all the interviews with the Italian American community were not planned. We just happened to meet a lot of Italian Americans that were linked to the story of A.P. Giannini. So we thought, okay, we're going to film them, and then we'll see how we're going to integrate them into the storytelling. And so we came back to Italy. We decided to carry out the post-production, the video editing and film editing in Rome. So and Cecilia was there with us. And so we realized we had far much more interviews than we expected. And so we thought, okay, we need some kind of fil rouge that could connect the dots. And we discussed that for a while. And Cecilia came up with the idea of creating a narrator that could somehow, on the one hand, represent all those Italian stereotypes that had been perpetrated in the US, not only because of social reasons, but also, you know, a lot of the Hollywood film industry is portraying Italian immigrants has contributed to, you know, to perpetrating that stereotype. And we thought that maybe this narrator could help and progress throughout the story and change and subvert these stereotypes the same way as A.P. Giannini's vision did with the Italian American community. And so I remember that Giorgio was still in Italy, and I've known him for quite a long time, but I'd never had the chance to work with him before. But I knew he had his first-hand experience of being an Italian in the US. So we asked him to audition, and the audition was amazing. So we thought, okay, we have our narrator, and he interprets the narrator that we have named with the slur that was attributed for a long time to many Italians, which is the ego. And we thought, okay, let's create a character and design a character that could put together all those, you know, injustices and stereotypes that were attached to the Italian American immigrants, and let's try to use it to show how a vision such as the one that Giannini had helped millions of people to become American somehow, and to also live their American dream.
Let me ask you something, and then I'll ask also Cecilia to comment. Before diving into this story and also creating this character, the narrator that you purposely decided to name with one of the worst nicknames that was given to the Italian Americans, were you really aware of the extent of the treatment and stereotypes and things that the Italians had to go through once they came here? Or is there sometimes still the misconception that people emigrated, obviously, because of wanting to leave a hardship behind, and they came to the US and everything was rosy and peachy?
So personally, I don't know, maybe Cecilia has another take on that. So I was partly aware of the treatment of the Italian community in the US historically. Also, I'm a researcher, I'm an academic, and I'm also a migrant myself. So there are aspects to that I knew. But one of the reasons why we decided to create this character was also because basically all the Italian Americans that we had met and interviewed, and we have interviewed them in relation to A.P. Giannini, they all mentioned this aspect of the discrimination and, the kind of different treatment, not the least the financial treatment that they had was very different from other immigrants from other countries in the US. And that's why the figure of A.P. Giannini was so important to them, because thanks to Giannini, they were able to, have a bank account, start a business, and ask for a loan. And the extent of the discrimination and the extent of how much they felt grateful and to a figure like A.P. Giannini was so evident. And to me, it became evident the moment we interviewed the Giusti family, the farmers. And basically, of course, for them, it was their great-grandparents, so they possibly didn't even meet them. But they still had the first loan and the first bill from the Bank of Italy framed in the kitchen. So it was something so strong for them that when we came back to Italy and we discussed how can we put together this film, it wasn't an easy choice to make, because the moment we use that word, the Dago word, and the moment we create a character that delves deeply into the Italian stereotypes, it's risky, because you'll never know, who is going to see the film. Maybe people can be triggered by something that it's still an open wound. But we thought in the end that could be a possibility to open conversation about the history of the Italian American community, because in the end, it's one of the largest immigrant communities in the United States. So I don't know if Cecilia would like to add anything about that, but that's my...
I'm very much in the same sense. Part of the knowledge that I had on discrimination against Italian comes from representation in Hollywood film, not the greatest representation, which indicates a certain view of the Italian American and the Italian American experiences. So that, in a way, we know. A few years ago, there was an article published. There was a very famous piece from I think it was a New York newspaper from the early 1900s, late 1800s, describing Italians coming into the country and how they were all these horrible things. And the article became really famous a few years ago in Italy as a sort of mirror to show how Italians were becoming very unfriendly and very unwelcoming to the migrant community into Europe, into Italy, and reminding them they had been in that position when they had gone to the US and what was welcoming them and why they should not be judging. So it became really political at some point a couple of years ago, if I'm not wrong. I think, Valentina, you probably remember as well that incident. Yeah. So it's about 3-4 years ago, which I kind of got closer to understanding the depth of the problem that Italians had to experience about 100 and something years ago, and then how these things change. And yes, as Valentina says, it was a risky choice, but we're very happy with it, because we think it actually doesn't play around or go around the problem. It faces it and wants to discuss it.
And also, yes, it builds dialogue, because it gives the ability to mutual understanding that needs to occur about knowing each other's dynamics and stories, and also do not repeat, don't do to others what it was done to you, and have the understanding 100 years ago. The tables were switched. Cecilia, I'm going to continue with you, because I'm going to share the picture of a lovely lady that had shared that is the granddaughter, if Yes, the granddaughter of Giannini. Tell us a little bit how easy it was to actually track her down and set up some time. And she is one of the two women, I don't want to say characters, but that we see in the documentary. So I'll leave Virginia to you, and then Valentina can tell us about the other narrator.
So Virginia was really a wonderful meeting with Virginia. As you can imagine, Virginia is not on Facebook and doesn't have Twitter or Instagram. So to find her, it took us a good year and a half to find her. But once we did, she was very welcoming to the idea, loved the idea, and told us, yes, I'm here, come and see me. So of course, as soon as we could travel, as Valentina said, we were there, and most welcoming, especially in sharing with us family anecdotes, family pictures, just a star, really, an all-round star for our film. We felt really blessed that she was able to participate and give us a really long, lovely interview. Yes. Fantastic, really.
She's a natural.
She's a natural. Yeah, she really is. We all had a great time, you know.
Yes.
We're a team of 6, and nobody wanted to leave actually when we had the afternoon with her.
It's like if you could just have one production just about her stories without having to cut and edit, I'm sure. Valentina, I apologize. I don't remember the name of the other character. We see her in she also tells us about the life of A.P. Giannini. She's a lady. I remember a red dress in her interviews. Just fill me in with the name of the lady that gave us so much information about A.P. Giannini in the documentary.
Yeah, so basically we had the chance to interview Francesca Valente, who is one of the experts about this story and the life of A.P. Giannini. On the one hand, that was the way Francesca Valente's contribution is edited into the film is very different from Virginia's view on her grandfather, because on the one hand, Virginia is basically the only person in the film that has met A.P. Giannini in person. All the others, because of historical, reasons and generational reasons. Whereas Francesca Valente, she has dedicated many years of her life exploring the story of A.P. Giannini, trying to put together all the pieces. She has also worked for many years as the director of the Italian Cultural Institute in Los Angeles. So she was basically one of the first people that we were able to approach, because she has a very strong online presence because of her work and her publications. And so we had the chance to read the book that she had published about A.P. Giannini. And so we thought that we could use Virginia's interview as kind of the family-oriented interview, and so she could contribute with the personal view she had and the relationship she had with her grandfather. Whereas Francesca Valente's interview is the one that basically sets the milestones and the main key point of the story. And so with these two interviews, and actually Francesca Valente was the first interview that we carried out, whereas Virginia Hammerness was one of the final ones that we had in California. Within these two, we thought, okay, we have the historical view on A.P. Giannini, and we have the family-oriented interview about A.P. Giannini and personal memories about A.P. Giannini. Everything else will be tailored around these two interviews, and that's what we did.
A couple of last questions before we go into closing. Same question for both of you. When you started this project, did you imagine how much the story will actually resonate with you, both as professionals, as a women in film, and as Italians living abroad? Cecilia, if you want to take this first.
I don't, okay, so let me say how I feel. So this story has been really important for me as a filmmaker because I sometimes, like we start doing projects and we think they're going to be difficult and raising money for them is going to be difficult. And I don't know what it is about doing the story where a lot of the incidents were something that nobody could have done it before, and then Giannini did it. So now it has given me the power of, but I can do it, like all this strength, and courage to go ahead and tackle things. Honestly, I think there is, I've learned so much about the feasibility of things, inspired by somebody who just went for it, who didn't say there's a problem, there's a block. Before we only gave money to wealthy people, now we give it to people who don't have much. No problem, let's do it. So kind of that's the attitude. It's hard to raise money for an independent film. No, it isn't. That's that's how it's changed.
Yes.
Yeah, my mindset. So yes.
Thank you. And Valentina?
Yeah, same for me. I mean, on the one hand, anytime you start a documentary project, you know that you're going to be different at the end of the project compared to, for example, when you film a fiction film, you know already what you're about to film. You're going to learn many things, but in the end, you know what you signed up for. Whereas for a documentary, at least in my experience, it's a transformational process. You end up seeing places you'd never thought you would see in your life. But again, for me, the thing that was the most amazing aspect was to realize that you really need a good bank to back you as a filmmaker. It makes a huge difference. It was a very difficult moment in the film industry back in 2020 and even in 2022 when we filmed. For our production studios for Daytona, it was even more difficult because we were changing or signing up with a new bank. So it was complicated in that moment, realizing on the other side of the world, yes, you really need a good bank and a one-to-one relationship with a banker that could talk to you to make a film, because we don't have to forget that this is an independent film. It has to go through much more struggle compared to a big production. So that's what this project taught me. So hopefully now we will be able to connect with our audience. I just wanted to mention that we have a sales agent in the US. That's California Picture. Tomorrow the American film market starts and we will be there with a project. California Picture will be there. Because in the end, our main aim was not just to film, but also to distribute the project. And so maybe this is a good opportunity to remember that the film is available and it wasn't produced by a platform. It was produced independently. So now we need that extra step to being able to reach our audience in the US and also in Italy and in other parts of the world.
Absolutely. And I hope that these, as many other interviews and articles about the project, will help in sharing a story. It can be a story of immigration in general, immigrants. Obviously AP Giannini's story was spectacular for many different ways, but has such a strong human component that anyone can relate it. So I highly encourage all the Italian cultural institutions, but schools as well. It would be great to see also the two of you possibly be invited to high schools, whether it's middle schools or high schools. People need to hear about these stories, that they have to believe in the future. They have to see some great examples. And these you can clearly see that this AP Giannini Bank to the Future has enabled you to discover parts of you, but not places that you didn't know before. But I think this probably could be a metaphor about dimensions of your own self and how you related to this project and became a part of who you are now. So any last remarks from Cecilia?
No, just so happy that you had us on so that we could talk about it, because, you know, being part of October, well, last days of October now, being part of the Italian Heritage and Culture Month was, in a way, a dream, you know, being able to be back in the US and go back to California and show the film in San Francisco. So I'm glad that we're still talking about it, and thank you again for having us.
I'm sure it will be. This is just the beginning of a lot of interest that you have indeed sparked, and will continue to mature in the next few months, and all in 2024. If you're ever on this side of the ocean, I would love to have you both at Istituto Mondo Italiano. So we'll see what your traveling calendar is going to be for the future. But unfortunately, our time together is up. Il Big Ben ha detto stop. It's time for us to say arrivederci e alla prossima. We want to thank you for tuning in into the program. If you have any questions or comments, or if you have any topics you would like us to address, please contact us at theitalianradiohour@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Remember, if you or any of your family and friends have missed a prior episode or would like to listen to this episode again, please visit our website at www.istitutomondoitaliano.org and click on the Italian Radio Hour tab. You can also subscribe to the Italian Radio Hour on YouTube or where you catch your favorite podcasts. And I would like to profusely thank both of my guests, Valentina Signorelli and Cecilia Zoppelletto, for joining us in this wonderful conversation about their latest production, AP Giannini, Bank to the Future. Our sponsor, Istituto Mondo Italiano. E until next time, alla prossima. Ciao, ciao.
Grazie mille.
Ciao.
Ciao.